Everton Football Club and Nottingham Forest have both been found guilty, allegedly, by the Premier League of breaking FFP rulings and breaching profitability and sustainability rules. Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. Welcome to another video. Yes, the big breaking news last night came from the Premier League, who announced that they seemingly have enough evidence to suggest that both Everton and Nottingham Forest are in breach of FFP rulings, and in particular PSR rulings, profitability and sustainability rules. They are seemingly on the warpath right now, and with Everton already facing one charge this season, the Premier League have seemingly tallied it up to two, whilst Forest is obviously off the mark with one charge to their name as things stand right now. Obviously, there's a lot of layers to this story. This was obviously a snowball that was a story that was snowballing and developing over time. We'd heard rumours, rumblings, whispers, whatever you want to call it, that the Premier League were not done when it came to investigating this type of stuff, and that Everton may not be just involved in one charge, but maybe a couple more as well, and that there may be other teams that may be in trouble or in some hot water with the Premier League as well. We're going to be talking about this issue, how it affects both of these teams, the statements that were made by all three parties involved in this case, and obviously what the Premier League, what it may mean for the Premier League and what it may mean for the overlooming shadow in this entire case, as it always and as ever in the forms of the likes of Chelsea and Manchester City. But before we go any further, I would like to remind you all, please like the video and also subscribe if you're new. Both things are always incredibly greatly appreciated. And of course, I encourage you lot to get involved in the comment section down below. I'm sure your thoughts, comments, opinions, predictions, feelings will all make for great and interesting reading. So please do get involved. I would love to hear from you all. But without further ado, let's get on with the video. Let's talk this FFP, PSR breach, both being made by Everton and Nottingham Forest. Of course, as we know, earlier on in the season, Everton were already charged with a breach of this particular ruling. And with Everton doing that, they received the biggest points deduction in Premier League history, which was, of course, a 10-point deduction. Everton, at that time, was seemingly suggesting that they had, in fact, been found guilty. They were not trying to cover up the fact of their guilt, but they did feel the punishment was severe. They did feel the punishment was unwarranted and that it was way too harsh for what they had done. And that's because the Premier League constantly moving goalposts, or reportedly seemingly moving goalposts on this type of thing, it meant that Everton's accounts were looking a little bit awkward and a bit weird than what they were meant to. But that was simply because of, like I say, them seemingly suggesting that the Premier League were moving their goalposts on this mid-season, making it a bit awkward for Everton and the rest of the teams to kind of keep up, which also may tie in with COVID seasons, which Everton have pointed the finger at, and we'll talk about a little more, and also the fact that they are planning to move to another stadium and build another stadium. The breaking news last night came from the Premier League. It was the confirmation of news that we were expecting to hear from. The Premier League released a statement saying that Everton Football Club and Nottingham Forest have each confirmed to the Premier League that they are in breach of the league's profitability and sustainability rules. This is as a result of sustaining losses above the permitted threshold for the assessment period ending the season of 2022-23. In accordance with the Premier League rules, both cases have now been referred to the chair of the judicial panel, who will appoint separate commissions to determine the appropriate sanction. Commissions are independent of the Premier League and Members Club. The proceedings are heard in private, with the Commission's final decision made public on the Premier League's website. The league will make no further comment until that time. Basically saying that at the end of the season there will be a hearing for these kinds of cases, and obviously with Everton already challenging one breach, it's going to be very interesting to see how the Premier League handles both of those breaches. What it does suggest to me though is if it is to be held at the end of the season, that could throw the Premier League in a bit of chaos and disarray, depending on obviously where Everton and Forest both finish. Now, you would imagine that both of these sides are going to be involved in a relegation battle. If the punishment isn't going to be handed out till the end of the season, Everton's point deduction, whether it be for the first case or the second case, could be increased, it could be decreased, it could be maintained. If that is to be the case, that could throw the Premier League into a bit of chaos, because we could come to the end of the season and we could know how everything is looking, But then we could also have to add the caveat of, well, what about potential points deduction for both of these teams? And if you're expecting both of these teams to be in a relegation battle, it could be severe enough that could see them be safe at the end of the season after 38 games, but then in the drop zone by the time those points deductions happen. So that could be very interesting come the end of the season to see whether or not that is going to obviously be the case. And I think they have a date penciled in for the end of May. So that could be very interesting indeed as far as what on-field in the Premier League kind of thing happens there. As far as what Everton are concerned, they released their own statement. They say Everton Football Club acknowledges the Premier League's decision to refer to a breach of profit and sustainability rules for the assessment period ending with the 2022-23 season to an independent Premier League commission. This relates to a period which covers seasons 2019 to 2020, 2020 to 2021, 21 to 22, and 22 to 23. It therefore includes financial periods of those same seasons for which the club has already received a 10-point sanction for. The club is currently appealing that particular sanction. The Premier League does not have guidelines which prevent a club being sanctioned for alleged breaches in financial periods which have already been subject to punishment, unlike other governing bodies including the EFL. As a result, and because of the Premier League's new commitment to deal with such matters in season, the club is in a position where it has no option but to submit a PSR calculation which remains subject to change pending the outcome of the appeal. The club must now defend another Premier League complaint which includes the very same financial periods for which it has already been sanctioned before that appeal has even been heard. The club takes the view that this results from a clear deficiency in the Premier League's rules. Everton can assure its fans that it will continue to defend its position during the ongoing appeal and should it be required to do so at any future commission, and that the impact on the supporters will be reflected as part of that process. So basically, Everton are suggesting that it's unfair that they're being charged for a second breach when their first breach and their first challenge of that first breach hasn't been heard of as of right now. And they feel like with the Premier League shifting goalposts so much on these types of rulings and financial periods and seasons, and obviously where part of a club's money goes onto which particular aspect of the club and everything, they feel like they've been very much hard done by in this situation, and that is why they're going to continue to challenge the Premier League's rulings going forward. And again, it's like I said earlier on in the season when I talked about Everton's 10-point deduction. Everton have been poorly mismanaged. There's no doubt about it. And Everton themselves are not saying that they're innocent in all of this. They're saying that they have been found guilty, and rightfully so. Everton's main cause for concern is the severity of the punishment. And it does seem like the Premier League are making an example of Everton to obviously build the case towards Manchester City. And part of that obviously is also down to the fact that the Premier League wants to show the government in particular that they can be a self-sustaining brand model and that they can clear out the issues in-house. Now, if they did it much earlier, the government wouldn't want to try to get involved as much. That is obviously an underlying sort of story there, where it seems that the government are trying to move in on the Premier League to try and help, to try and run things and to try and be a big player in that particular field, in that particular sport. So obviously help run things, and then obviously for financial benefit. Surprise, surprise, Tories. But no, that seems to be the overarching element to that story in terms of why the Premier League are cracking down on this type of thing. And it does seem, like I say, that they are using Everton as the prime example to hit here and to repeatedly beat in the build-up to obviously that Manchester City case, which is coming at the end of the season, before the beginning of next season, and in the autumn. So it's going to be very intriguing to obviously see how that one plays out, and whether or not this obviously is used as an example in that case, because the overall arching premise of this was to initially make an example out of Everton, whilst also showing that FFP rulings, when they are breached, the punishments have teeth. And that if you are found guilty, you will be punished for it. Everton have been punished for it. Manchester City are facing 115 charges. Now, it's easy to obviously make a case and a challenge for one case than it is for 115. That's what the argument was when obviously Everton were challenged and everyone was pointing the finger at Manchester City. That was the overarching point to the whole story, and that's why Manchester City will eventually get their day in court. They will eventually get their hearing, and those 115 charges will be heard of in court. And I'm sure Sky will glamorize it, and they'll make it out to be some sort of friggin' courtroom drama, their latest courtroom drama on Sky, or whatever the case may be. And I'm sure they'll do anything and everything they can to glamorize it and make it seem like it's a massive deal, which, yes, it is. But at the same time, if obviously they had done this much earlier, there wouldn't be so many cases to obviously involve, and Everton wouldn't feel like they're being hard done by in this situation. So we'll have to obviously wait and see how that one plays out. But in Everton's case, they feel like it's unfair that they haven't had their first challenge heard of yet, and they're already being breached for an alleged second commission by the Premier League. Forest's statement, on the other hand, was made a bit more briefer. They say that Nottingham Forest acknowledges a statement from the Premier League confirming that the club has today been charged with a breach of the league's profitability and sustainability rules. The club intends to continue to cooperate fully with the Premier League on this matter and are confident of a speedy and fair resolution. So we'll see, obviously, how that goes with Forest. Now, from The Athletic, they basically ran an article on this, and they basically stated that in Everton's case, it comes from COVID seasons. £260 million has allegedly been lost by Everton across both COVID seasons, and I would probably safely say that most of it may come from obviously transfers and managers that have obviously been and gone. And of course, it could also tie in with the fact that they want a new stadium, and they were building a new stadium at the time. And Everton's case may just be a case of poor timing, which is still a breach, and there's obviously still a breach in profit and everything, and there's obviously still a breaking of those laws, and we need obviously those laws, because if we didn't have FFP rulings and restrictions and things, the teams at the top would continue to spend astronomical amounts of money with no repercussions. They would get the best players, they would put in incredible amounts of money to those players in terms of wages and in terms of transfer fees, and then the teams at the bottom may feel like they need to catch up, so they may try and do the same thing, but it wouldn't be sustainable, and therefore they may go out of business. So obviously we need those laws and restrictions and everything put in place. But for Everton's case, like I say, it may just be through poor timing that they've been caught out in this situation. I know that obviously they took a few gambles during those COVID seasons. It didn't necessarily work out. But the interesting thing from my point of view is that they seem to have been using the COVID seasons as an excuse a lot, and have been relying on the COVID seasons a lot in this particular manner. Like I say, it is very interesting to see that. It is very interesting to obviously hear that kind of excuse being looked at and pointed at, considering that every team went through COVID seasons. Like I say, maybe it is for Everton just a case of poor timing, with obviously the new stadium, the managers, the players, and everything else in between. For Forest, with them only getting back to the Premier League for the first time in about 20 odd years last season, they returned to England's top flight division and instantly had to make about 100 different new signings. The Athletic reported that allegedly Forest signed 42 players across the entirety of last season, spending somewhere in the region of 250 million. A lot of people raised their eyebrows at that and thought it was a bit strange that a newly promoted club, particularly one that has been floundering in the Championship for the best part of 20 years, was able to spend so much in their first season. Now, I know that they had to spend a lot of money, and I know that they had to get a lot of players in, because obviously their squad was ripped apart by players not wanting to be there anymore, players having their loan contracts obviously up at the end of that Championship season, and obviously players leaving on free transfers and everything. So they did have to spend a lot of money, but of course there were a lot of eyebrows raised when Forest made the amount of signings and for the money of those signings that they did. Forest argument seemingly relies on Brennan Johnson, the sale of Brennan Johnson that of course took place in the summer. Where did that signing take place? When did that signing take place? Was that enough time for Forest to put in the right paperwork or anything to obviously suggest that they hadn't been in breach of those financial fair play rulings and obviously hadn't gone over the threshold of profit sustainability and that kind of thing? That seems to be what the Athletic are reporting as being Forest's argument in this matter. Now go and find that article, by the way, or go and find someone else that can explain it better. This isn't my area of expertise, so I'm not going to sit here and say that I'm explaining this in the best possible way. I encourage you to do your own research and to obviously find other people that know it better than I do. But yeah, that's kind of what I'm. That's kind of what I'm going off here. Articles from the Athletic in particular, as to my source of knowledge and understanding of this particular topic. So where are we at then? Well, it's like I said in the Everton video I did a few months ago. It's the fans that obviously suffer. Because, like I say, at the end of the season, if they are found to be guilty and there is going to be more points deductions, it's going to be Everton and Forest that suffer. And maybe another 10 points to Everton is going to not be enough for them to maintain their Premier League status. Maybe this is going to be the season where they drop into the Championship. It's going to be hard on the Everton fans. It's going to be hard for Everton themselves. It's going to be poor timing again because of obviously the new stadium and everything. But it just shows you how poorly mismanaged that football club has been run for the past several years, and how football can be very dangerous for fans. Because, like I say, the fans are completely innocent in this, and yet they're the ones that are going to suffer the most because of how poorly mismanaged their club has become. And even though it is Everton, and even though I am a rival of Everton and I'm a Liverpool fan, it's still sad. That's still people's livelihoods. That's still people's love and their wants and their escapism from maybe modern day life, or just their passion and their love. Like, it is obviously horrible. And obviously the same goes for Nottingham Forest as well. If they spend the best part of 20 years trying to get up from the Championship to the Premier League, and at the first time that they do, they're poorly mismanaged enough to be seen as breaching certain rules that could obviously cost them a season later their place in the Premier League, and they may have to start all over again from next season. It's going to be very interesting to see how these kind of cases play out and everything, but it is obviously very harsh on the fans. It's very harsh on everybody involved. And ultimately, it's just because the Premier League, like I say, they want to maintain their status in this. They want to obviously keep the focus on the game. They obviously want to try and tidy up the game as best as possible now that the government are keeping tabs and keeping eyes on them, and they want to obviously prove that they are a sustaining model that can obviously look after their own product, so to speak. So that's the reason why they're tightening their grip on this. We did say that if obviously they have been found to have broken rules, then obviously they do need to be punished. We've said that right from the get-go. No matter what team you are, no matter who you are, you deserve to be punished. The overlooming story, like I say, over this is obviously the fact of Chelsea and Manchester City, of course, in all of this. City will get their day in court. I'm sure Chelsea will as well, despite being the whistleblowers of their own making. For City, of course, it's a bit more difficult because obviously they're dragging their heels in this. City are obviously trying to defend themselves at every turn and make it as awkward as possible for the Premier League to kind of catch them. It's a weird sort of catch me if you can scenario in this one. But City will get their day in court. They will get punished. So I wouldn't go too crazy on the whole, well, we've only broke one and they broke 115. Why aren't you punishing them? They will get their day in court. Trust me. And if they are found guilty, I can imagine it's going to be a lot more severe because they have to obviously maintain the precedent now. They obviously have to maintain some level of consistency in regards to all of these things. Because if they don't, then Everton really do, and Nottingham Forest and whoever else they manage to find guilty of these types of rulings certainly do have a case to go forward of unfair treatment and being obviously ridiculed by the Premier League and embarrassed by the Premier League in this type of scenario. If City are found to be doing nothing, I find it difficult to believe that 115 charges are just going to be swept away under the carpet in the way that some fans may think that may happen. I find it hard to believe. But like I say, go and do your own research on this. Go and find out some of your own things on this, because it's obviously a very layered and very intricate and interesting story that we obviously haven't heard the last of, whether it is in regards to these two clubs, or maybe there are other clubs that are seemingly flying dangerously close to the sun in this particular matter, with FFP rulings and PSR rulings in particular. But those are just the thoughts, comments, opinions, predictions, feelings, whatever you want to call it, of this guy. I want to know what you guys think. What do you make of the whole FFP and PSR rulings from the Premier League in regards to both Everton and Nottingham Forest? What do you make of everything that's going on alongside this in terms of Manchester City and Chelsea and everybody else in between? I'd love to know your thoughts, comments, opinions, predictions, feelings, whatever you want to call it, on this particular topic down below in the comment section, because I'm sure it'll all make for interesting and great reading. Otherwise, hit the like button on the way out if you enjoyed the video. Subscribe if you're new or want to see more content like this. Both things are always greatly apprecited. And as always, thank you all so much for watching and listening. I've been Fletch. This has been another Fletch Talks video, and I'll see you all again soon in another video or live stream or whatever it may be. Cheers, guys. Thanks everyone for watching. Take care. Enjoy the rest of your day. Speak to you again soon.